I make that very known in my music, because that is my purpose now, to be very vocal about that if I can help anyone else.
You're watching The Indie Seat. My name is Nick Olivera.
So yeah, it's been all
Today my guest is singer-songwriter, People's Choice Award winner, Megan Morrison. Megan, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start off by asking, okay, you studied classical voice performance at Amherst.
Yes.
Before moving into singing for punk bands in New York. Can you talk about the difference between those two worlds?
They're very different. I started singing when I was really young, and I sang all different kinds of music, but then when I got into middle school and high school is when I started singing in choirs and started excelling at that. And so when it was time to go to college, I knew I wanted to go to school for music, and classical music seemed to be the direction I was headed in. So I studied with some great vocal teachers, and it really helped me develop my voice, and I still use that power that I got from that. But it's a very different style of singing. And then when I got really into rock music, it was like I had to untrain myself almost. But I had to keep parts of, the learning how to sing from your diaphragm, and, all the techniques that I learned, I tried to keep, but a lot of the classical, like the way I pronounced words, had to go out the door. So it was a very, very big difference, and still to this day, I'm working on it.
Can you give me an example of like a word that you had to unlearn how to pronounce for rock?
Oh, man. Just like pronouncing the T's, and, instead of saying, all right, I'd be like, all right, like different differences like that, where everything is pronounced in classical music, and everything would be spoken like this, and if you were singing, and then rock, you don't want to sing it like that. But that's also kind of my style as well. It's a little more towards like Muse, Matt Bellamy, where he is really pronouncing words, and it's kind of like, my dream before I die is to write a rock opera. So to do, to kind of mix both worlds into one.
What were some of your influences for the rock side of things?
I mean, from an early age, I was introduced to like Led Zeppelin, Tom Petty, the Rolling Stones. So like I would say like Led Zeppelin had the biggest influence on like me falling in love with rock music. And then as time went on and the 90s happened, like Nirvana, all those amazing 90s bands had a huge influence on me, especially like the female ones like Hole and Garbage and, PJ Harvey, like all those awesome singers from the 90s. They had a really big influence on me. And then when I moved to New York, I got really into Muse, which is my favorite band, and the lead singer, Matt Bellamy, he's just, I think he's super talented. That kind of became an influence as far as how I was writing the music, because a lot of this stuff, he has like classical piano and stuff, and then it hits really hard, and that was like, this is my style of music. So I've kind of taken a little bit from every genre, but definitely those people have had a big influence on me.
You mentioned Muse, and I think of the theatricality of that band, particularly like during their, I think it was Black Holes and Revelations. When was Knights of Sidonia?
That was Black Holes and Revelations, okay. I believe. I'm bad with album names.
Yeah, me too. And I'm hosting a music show. Go figure. I think of that theatricality, and I see how it reflects in your work, particularly for the music video for 9 Lives. It's you in like a 1920s nightclub. You're singing into one of those big iron microphones, yes. And there's dancing skeletons.
Yes.
I mean, what was that your idea? Was it the idea of the music video?
That was all my idea. So for me, when I write a song, the music video is like there immediately. As I'm writing the song, I have the idea, the visuals come. It's very rare that I write a song and I don't immediately have an idea. I have like music videos backed up right now that I'm waiting to record until I finish my album. But for that one, I just knew, I had certain things in mind. I knew I wanted the dancing skeletons because 9 Lives is really about my life, what I've gone through. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, I struggled with addiction, and I am now in recovery, and I make that very known in my music, because that is my purpose now, to be very vocal about that if I can help anyone else that listens to my music that might be struggling. And whether it's with addiction or not, like, we're all usually struggling with something. And so I want to make that very clear in my music, that I am human and that I have gone through these struggles. So 9 Lives is kind of my story of just being, you know, having that kind of addict personality growing up and just feeling alone and by myself, even though I really wasn't. And I was always so scared and always so afraid to be myself, just afraid of the unknown, afraid of a lot. And when I finally got sober, I felt like I invited all the skeletons out of my closet to dance, and it was finally like, this is me. I don't have any secrets. You know, I finally truly felt like myself. So that would kind of like symbolize that, like, the skeletons in my closet that like came out to dance. So that I had an awesome choreographer. Those dancers were amazing. That was really fun. But like all the other stuff, there were only a couple things that weren't my idea. Like the hands coming out was the director's idea, and it was like a last minute decision too. It was like my makeup artists and my husband, and it was pretty funny. But for the most part, all the ideas came from my brain.
I want to circle back to you in New York. So this is after Amherst, before your stint in the rock punk scene. You had gone to New York to pursue a career in Broadway.
Yes.
Do you think the Broadway aspirations kind of play into the whole theatricality element of your music?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're in my house on any given day, it sounds like you're, you know, in a musical theater show, because I'm just like constantly singing songs from Broadway shows, because that makes me so happy. And I still love, there's nothing like the rush that you get from being in a live theater performance. Like, it's different than performing on stage with a band. Like, for me, it's just so fun getting to be on stage, play a character, and, you know, do all that stuff. But I definitely still, those theatrics are very much present in my performances and in my music.
Tell me this, when you were pursuing Broadway, were you also doing the rock punk scene at the time? Like, did those two worlds ever splash into each other?
So this is kind of where I went to New York City to finish my classical degree for my last year of school. I started auditioning for Broadway shows, like during the day, sometimes cutting class. Then I was kind of introduced to like the underground scene, like the underworld of New York City, which is kind of where I made my home. And I started, you know, finding these like underground bands and all, you know, all the cool music venues that don't even like have signs outside. And that's really where I found like, oh wow, like I think I need to be here. So the classical music got kind of less important, and then I kind of stopped going to auditions. And also this is the time where like drugs and alcohol really came in and like fueled what was going on in my life. So like all that, my training, the classical, the Broadway pursuing, that kind of is all pushed aside, and that's kind of where the rock came in.
If you're an addict trying to get clean, probably the last place you want to be is the New York rock punk scene.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it unless, you know, you've been sober for a while and, you know, you're good with yourself and you're able to go back there. But for anyone newly sober or trying to get sober, I wouldn't recommend it, no.
You're an accomplished fire spinner. At what point did you decide to add fire spinning to the resume? You could sing, you could dance, you could do all this stuff. Where does fire spinning come in?
So, I mean, why not? That was like the next logical thing, right? No, I'm kidding. So I was in New York, and that's when my husband came into the picture. I met him, and he had just started doing this fire spinning, which I didn't even know that existed. Him and his friends were doing it, and so immediately I wanted to try it. And there's this awesome music festival down in Honduras that we went to, and it's all kinds of like fire spinners, and that's like a big thing there, and I just fell in love with it. And that was the first time I spun fire, was down in Honduras. From there, it just kind of became a hobby, and I was, you know, like I was spinning the poi, the fireballs that spin, and I'm in my Brooklyn apartment, and there are like soot marks all over the ceiling because I'm like practicing. And we had like a little rooftop that I would go up on if I could. But then when we moved down to Miami, I really started practicing in the backyard, and then I was also modeling. So then my modeling agency got me these auditions where they're looking for fire performers, and like next thing I know, I'm in like a Pitbull music video, and I'm doing like reggaeton music videos, and I'm on stage with Jessie J at the New Now Next Awards doing Fire to Her Burning Up song. So I started getting like hired to do fire for all these other artists, and I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. And that's kind of when I decided, well, if I'm doing fire for these other artists, I want that to be a part of my thing too. So I decided to put my fire and my music together, and now in the 2 videos that I have released as a solo artist, I do fire in both those music videos, and I'll continue to do fire throughout my videos. And I even like have been working on a live performance where I do fire and sing at the same time. So it's just something that all kind of came together.
I'm trying to picture you in like these tiny New York apartments, kind of. Well, that's a fireman's nightmare.
Well, it wasn't lit on fire. It wasn't on fire in the apartment. Just like I would only let it on fire outside.
Do you think artists today, do they have the choice to simply entertain, or do you think they have an obligation to be some kind of a role model?
I think it depends. I think now is different than it used to be, and I think artists are having more of a voice, and I think that's why a lot of artists are steering away from the labels where they have to act and look a certain way and are being independent artists. But once you're at a certain level, I mean, there are actors and musicians that definitely speak their mind, and they're very true to themselves. And then I know some people are pressured into being that that role model, that person, and not necessarily able to be themselves. So I think it depends. It really depends. But I think more artists are finally speaking out, and especially about like politics and stuff like that. I feel like things might be changing, and people are finally like able to, it kind of happened in the 90s where people were able to be themselves and artists were able to be themselves, and then like we kind of like fell back a little bit, I feel like, and now I feel like it might be progressing a little bit again. So my music, everything is on my website, morrisonmusicofficial.com. There you can find Spotify, you can find iTunes, all that stuff.
You've been watching The Indie Seat, brought to you by Context of a Generation. My name is Nick Olivera. Stay tuned next time.
So that was The Indie Seat. If you like what you saw and you want to be a partner, or if you want to collaborate with us, even if you're an artist and you want to submit your work, check out our website, contextofageneration.org, or go ahead and submit an email to us at submit@contextofageneration.org. And for all the artists, make sure you put your name, your social media handles, and attach some of your work as well. And for those who are interested in being a partner or collaborating, please email us, and we would love to reach back out. Peace. That was The Indie Seat. Thank you.